Today's video is brought to you by MDHair.
Are you in need of assistance, my lady?
Saruman the White, Saruman the Wise, Saruman of many colours. He is known for being a traitor to both sides, but was he always evil? Did he ever truly stand a chance at succeeding in his initial quest? Let's have a look at that today.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
First things first, do not forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so that you can join the ever-growing Brohirrim. In his heart, Saruman would never admit that he was utterly ruled by his obsessions with power, with the Dark Lord, and with the One Ring. Saruman's corruption was a slow process, and probably began with impatience rather than with evil. Saruman believed humans incapable of acting with wisdom and according to their affairs, a folly of the heart in the mind of the powerful. Like Sauron, Saruman saw disorder and thought he could force proper order on the world as he would have it. As he would not admit in his heart his corruption by Sauron, he would imitate Gandalf in his dark councils, pipe and hat in the very shape of the Grey Pilgrim, and yet begrudge him every blessing. Saruman demonstrates the corrupting power of wisdom and how it is often of no benefit to the wise. Okay, so it is time to stop the video there to thank today's sponsor, MDHair. MDHair is the world's first medical-grade hair regrowth treatment customized to the exact cause and type of hair loss. They have a website that uses a quiz and a scalp picture analysis that really helps customize their kits just for you. I'm talking to the camera for this one because it is just that little bit more personal. You know, when I started YouTube, I looked more like this. And now, as you can tell, I look more like this. Definitely less hair on my head. So when they reached out, I thought, you know what have I got to lose? Why not? And I haven't regretted it. The kit comes with loads of great products, but the best part about it is each kit is made specifically for the person. So whatever treatment you may need for your hair, that's made for you. It may not be the same as person B or person C. It's done just for you. I can already feel a difference to my hair, so long may it continue, and I cannot wait to see the results. One of the best things for me about it all though is that they do have a 24/7 customer service, so if you ever need to speak to a dermatologist, it just takes 2 seconds. They're on chat. It's just that simple. And thanks to MDHair as well, I can offer you 70% off your first monthly box. Like, that is a great saving. All you have to do is use the promo code on screen or follow our link in the description below and start your hair healing journey. What have you got to lose? But now let's get back to the man who I am quite jealous of his hair, Saruman. Now, it is no light thing to say that someone is evil. This is perhaps the greatest indictment into someone's character that exists, as it is a rejection of the moral community. An act of evil is one that is, to be as clear as possible here, inhumane to the extreme, whether implicit or explicitly inflicting harm and suffering on others and refusing peace. Was Saruman evil? It is tricky. It is a characteristic of the book largely absent from the film, that is, the ring's actual substance and claim over people in ways almost unremarkable, but deeply influential. Saruman's fascination with the rings of power led him to the forging of his own rings. Saruman the Ringmaker. He is pompous and delusional, and if we think of characteristics that define and demonstrate evil, it is first of all the killing of a person or of persons. Saruman by influence and menace made many ghosts out of men and used the orcs and creatures of his breeding, the fighting Uruk-hai. This is what is at all times fought against. The would-be rulers who created tumult throughout the ages, sought dominion over others, and blood was shed for this. Saruman influenced a world at the tip of a knife blade as it was. Theoden King in Rohan was under his envoy's direct control as one example. Saruman attempted to drive Theoden to despair and impotence while he broke the world beneath his feet, but he overreached himself, and Saruman did just what Gandalf accused him of doing.
Tell me, friend, when did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
Even when he is defeated, his voice is able to serve him well, and he is able to free himself from the Ents by bewitching a guard. From there he flees to the Shire, where we learn that he has long been in dealings with the more corrupt element of the Green Dragon patrons, who come off as hypocritical and fraudulent, especially if we consider what such folk as Ted Sandyman said about queer folk that Bilbo brought around when he would later happily deal with Sharky. Saruman in his shame is reduced to this pathetic bargaining figure, but only after thoroughly bespoiling the bloom of the rose that was the Shire. A loss that, for Frodo at least, is a permanent one. It is of no use to the war effort. At that point, the war was lost. It seems rather a personal attack on what Gandalf loved more so than any military strategy. Sharky and Lotho Sackville Baggins made great profit here, and the Great Mill is larger and more obscene than ever, belching foul plumes and vapour not unlike the black breath of the Nazgul. In the end, Saruman was more of a Nazgul than Istari and Gandalf. Honestly, proved to be the only wizard who didn't entirely lose the plot. Saruman turned outright evil, responsible for the deaths of thousands. So, how can you say that is not evil? Going back to the question of when Saruman turned evil though, we can look back to that moment of the Gladden Field when he first glimpsed the possibility of what being a ringmaker could afford him, what powers he could wield, who he could dominate and control. And there is a horrible reveal when Aragorn goes inside Orthanc after the war and finds material remains of his dead ancestor in Saruman's possession. Not only was he able to do such a thing and have such ghastly relics in his possession, at the time he was still dealing on false terms with the White Council too, all in the way to defeat Sauron. What made Saruman evil was not his desire for order, nor his love of the Dark Lore. Everybody needs a hobby after all, that's fine. His obsession proved his end. When Aragorn, with the help of Gimli, finds the Elendilmere, also known as the Star of Elendil, and the chain that likely bore the One Ring, both of which Isildur died with, it just shows Saruman must have found Isildur's body, pillaged it, and most likely burnt it afterwards. Desecration, mishandling the remains of the fallen dead, despite its abject and repeated failure. Saruman continued to search for the ring after them. Therefore Isildur must have fallen not into the deep stream but into shallow water, no more than shoulder high. Why then, though an age had passed, were there no traces of his bones? Had Saruman found them and scorned them, burned them with dishonour in one of his furnaces? If that were so, it was a shameful deed, but not his worst. Within Tolkien's Legendarium, there seems to be an affinity between the desire to attain mastery over the physical materials of Arda and the desire to attain mastery over the wills of other sentient beings. Even when begun in a spirit of sheer creativity and wonder, the craftsmanship impulse turned imperceptibly but surely into the desire to possess and hoard. Back when the Council of the Valar had their plan to send some of their own on a mission to Middle-earth, it all started well enough as Karumo, aka Saruman, volunteered for this, to do his best to stop the forces of darkness gathering in the world. All well and good until the proud Karumo was forced to accept the lesser-seeming Maya named Iwendil, aka Radagast, and he was thrust upon him. Karumo was obliged to take Iwendil to please Yavanna, wife of Aule, as it says in the Unfinished Tales book. But worse was yet to come. After Manwë convinced the humble Alorin, aka Gandalf, that he should go, it is said. But Alorin declared that he was too weak for such a task, and that he feared Sauron. Then Manwë said that that was all the more reason why he should go, and that he commanded Alorin. Illegible words follow that, seem to contain the word third, but at that Varda looked up and said, "Not as the third," and Karumo remembered it. Galadriel wished to make Gandalf the head of the White Council in Middle-earth when it first convened, this being in the year 2463 of the Third Age of Middle-earth. There were tensions between Galadriel and Saruman for this. Despite her intention to put Gandalf in place as the head of the Order, Saruman was able to use his silver tongue to realise his desire for advancement and to be put above the others, and as Galadriel recalls, "I it was who first summoned the White Council, and if my designs had not gone amiss, it would have been governed by Gandalf the Grey, and then mayhap things would have gone otherwise." Nevertheless, Saruman would have long remembered this attempted snub, and it must have poisoned his thoughts. peoples. After all, despite his thirst for ring lore, there is no record of him ever journeying to visit Galadriel, whose woodland realm of Lothlorien lay so close at hand, and there must have been so much knowledge there. But no, he never went. In a game played to the death, geopolitics and the relative might of allies and enemies plays a huge role in one's own strategy, and Saruman, like the rest of the Astari, was clad in bodies as of men, real and not feigned, but subject to the fears and pains and weariness of earth, able to hunger and thirst and be slain. Saruman possessed a prodigious memory, and had travelled from the Grey Havens to the unguessable east with the Blue Wizards, Alatar and Palando, before returning to dwell in Gondor for many centuries before finally settling into his abode at Isengard. Shortly after his arrival on the shores of Middle-earth, Saruman had witnessed the might and glory of the Gondorian king Hiarmendikil I, who decisively defeated the Haradrim, and under whose long 134-year reign, Gondor reached the summit of its power. From that point on, Saruman observed the gradual but irreversible decline in Gondor's power relative to Mordor, which by the time of the War of the Ring seemed impossibly tilted against Gondor and the West. Saruman's realization spurred him in both a sense of dread and a disdain for his allies who seemed incapable of ever prevailing against the rising power in the East. These emotions must surely have weakened Saruman's moral fibre to the extent that previously abhorred thoughts came to be seen as possible, perhaps even necessary if he must almost single-handedly work to defeat the Dark Lord. Foremost of the free peoples of Middle-earth, Saruman took it upon himself to delve deeply into the mysteries at the heart of the Great Rings of Power. In doing so, he exposed himself, much like Marie Curie and the other pioneers of the Radiation Age, to the subtle but very real perils inherent in their subjects, as Gandalf recounted to Frodo in Bag End. His knowledge is deep, but his pride has grown with it, and he takes ill any meddling. The lore of the Elven Rings, great and small, is his province. He has long studied it, seeking the lost secrets of their making. And also with this, how at the Council of Elrond, Gandalf says too how Saruman has long studied the arts of the enemy himself. Isolation within Orthanc is where all his pride and pursuit of power took the once proud Karumo, the more prideful Saruman. While Gandalf continued to aid and assist the free peoples of Middle-earth by way of constant travel, seeking out knowledge and interactions with the peoples of Middle-earth, with an open mind and will to do what was right. In contrast, Saruman locked himself away inside a dim, foreboding tower that was essentially a pretender's version of Barad-dûr, and Saruman had not even raised his own fortifications. This had the further problem of limiting his interactions with the people that he was meant to protect, and so they became a far-off, distant concept, not living and breathing people whose lives were unique and valuable, down to the very last individual. But to go back to where we began, let's look at Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings to tell us in this timeline just when it all truly started with Saruman. Circa 3000. The shadow of Mordor lengthens. Saruman dares to use the Palantir of Orthanc, but becomes ensnared by Sauron, who has the Ethelstone. He became a traitor to the Council. So there we have it. While it seems Saruman's double-dealing and corruption appeared to have begun much earlier than is widely known, the characteristics for his later evils and attempted evils, not least of all the use of his great knowledge to bring explosives into the Hornburg, to open up the Horndyke and allow his soldiers to enter into the fortress to better facilitate the slaughter of the free peoples of Middle-earth who stood against him and his master. Sauron was not fooled by Saruman's double dealings, rather Saruman was so deceived he was willing to deceive himself. He was corrupted long before he imprisoned Gandalf, before he bred the Uruk-hai within the circles of Isengard, and his pretenses to glory and power should have been seen before he was sent to the world of Arda. But thankfully, the people of Middle-earth, under sound leadership and comprised of honest, decent people, were able to overcome and triumph over these dark forces that we have not lost in our own time, and as long as monsters have been part of our myths and fiction, it is likely they have for just as long been part of our world. And all we can do is fight against them at our best. With that now though, it is time for my question of the day, which is, do you think Saruman ever stood a chance? Was he always going to turn evil, or was it just a series of unfortunate events that led to his downfall? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section below. And now to shout out our patrons. You guys have been incredible in supporting our short film, and we cannot thank you enough. We have the Divine Power tier members of Kevin and Abram, the Fire Demon tier members of Nishith and Gregory, and the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew, Jennifer, Hunter, and David too. Every single one of you is a true legend of the Brohirrim. Finally, if you have managed to reach the end of the video with me today and you are enjoying what you see on the channel, please hit that subscribe button with the bell icon too, so that you can be notified of all future uploads. And so, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.